This is what the Great Wall of China looked like. It might have been the largest construction project in ancient history, but modern historians are not quite sure if it was worth all the effort. Most will tell you that it was built to keep out the Mongols, but that's only part of the story. Others will say that it was built to protect China's trade routes. That's closer, but not exact. Still others will mention how it was built to control unruly populations. Now, that's getting warmer, but you're still missing the point. What was really going on in China? Let's go back in time and find out together. The year is 2121 BCE, and the nation of China has just become an empire. For hundreds of years before this, the land of China consisted of a bunch of small, often feuding states. To survive, each state had to build up some sort of fortification around its borders, creating hundreds of miles of disconnected walls. When China united, it became the first great superpower in the East. But now that it's one nation, those walls need to connect. Enter our hero, Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. He was known for being both a brilliant military strategist and a ruthless leader. He had a huge task ahead of him, uniting a stubborn population under one banner. To get them to cooperate, he instituted harsh laws and heavy taxes. Those who didn't comply quickly found themselves at the business end of a Qin sword. When it came to the Great Wall, he expected no less obedience. There were other problems too. While China had become a formidable force in the east, it was surrounded by hostile tribes, most notably the nomadic Xiongnu to the north. They lived a life of freedom on the open range, riding swift horses and shooting deadly arrows. Sometimes they'd raid into China, stealing food, women, and treasure. This was unacceptable to the new emperor, but he couldn't stop these raids without a proper defense system. So he connected the existing walls, improved their fortifications, and ordered new ones to be built. And with that, the Great Wall of China was born. It ran for thousands of miles along the country's northern border, separating the riches of China from the emptiness of the Mongolian grasslands. But it wasn't built in a day, nor with just one type of brick and mortar. The Great Wall actually consisted of 3 separate walls built by 3 different dynasties over the course of 2 millennia. During the time of the Qin, however, it looked something like this. It was built out of tamped earth, a mixture of dirt and gravel packed tightly together. This made the wall cheaper to construct, but also weaker and less durable. Qin Shi Huang hoped that his successors would eventually replace the tamped earth sections with stone and brick. And to ensure that they did, he put special emphasis on building watchtowers. Every 200 meters or so there was a tower where soldiers could rest between shifts and spot incoming enemies. Whenever a threat was detected, they lit a fire to warn nearby garrisons. Before long, every section of the wall would be manned by troops, making it impossible for the Xiongnu to breach the border without being spotted. As for the civilian workers who actually built the wall, let's just say that their working conditions were not ideal. They worked 12-hour days carrying wheelbarrows full of dirt, gravel, or sometimes bricks. If they broke, they were often left to die in the middle of nowhere. Once the Qin Shi Huang was satisfied that the wall was secure enough, he turned his attention to the next great project, conquering more land and extending the reach of his empire. This made the Great Wall more important than ever before, because now it had to defend a much larger area. On the plus side, this meant more jobs and more work for the commoner. However, given how the Qin treated its workers, we doubt that made much difference. The next dynasty to build on the Great Wall was the Han, who ruled China from 206 BCE to 220 CE. By this time, China had grown so powerful that it even threatened the nomadic Xiongnu. Over time, the Xiongnu were pushed back farther and farther away from the border, which meant that the Great Wall didn't have to be as tall or as thick to do its job. Instead, the Han used their wall to keep order within their empire. See, while the Xiongnu were generally peaceful, there were other factions that wanted to invade China, namely the various kingdoms of Central Asia. To fight back, the Han built garrison towns near the wall where elite soldiers could live and train. This way, if invaders ever got close, the defenders wouldn't have to waste precious time marching from distant cities. Another way that the Han used the wall to maintain order was to turn it into a highway. Along the entire length of the frontier, there were inns every few miles where weary travelers could relax and catch their breath. This made the wall a popular route for traders, merchants, and diplomats. In fact, this section of the wall became known as the Military Silk Road. It connected the wealthy markets of China to the West, Central Asia, and even Europe. Of course, this also made the wall a popular target for bandits. So the government built guard posts every 300 meters to keep the peace. And that's not even counting the secret police that monitored trade along the route. In reality, the Great Wall was a highly efficient way for the Chinese government to collect taxes. All goods imported through the wall had to be registered and inspected by government agents. Since the wall had been designed to keep track of enemies, it could just as easily monitor trade. The third and final dynasty to build the Great Wall was the Ming, who took power in 1368. Unlike their predecessors, the Ming knew firsthand what it was like to be invaded by horsemen from the north. Just before they took power, the Mongols had overrun China and established the Qin Dynasty. However, once the Ming were firmly in control, they did everything they could to prevent another invasion. So they set about rebuilding the entire wall from scratch, except this time using bricks instead of tamped earth or stone. Most of the sections built by the Ming still stand today and look like this. The Ming also strengthened the wall with a series of fortifications, including barracks for troops, storage facilities for supplies, and even drains to keep the wall from crumbling. The reason the Ming went to such great lengths was simple. They hated foreigners, and the Mongols proved that foreigners could conquer China if they were prepared enough. So to prevent future invasions, the Ming did everything they could to keep foreigners out. Of course, sometimes that meant keeping Chinese people out too. The Ming divided the country into two spheres of influence, the civilized interior and the barbarian exterior. Since barbarians weren't allowed into the heartland, most of the Great Wall was built on the border. The wall also had a big impact on immigration. To get past the wall, migrants had to fill out an official document explaining why they wanted to enter the empire. If the government deemed them undesirable, they were simply denied entry and sent home. Now, despite all these precautions, the wall never stopped invaders from getting into China. It was simply too long, and the terrain too varied. An army could always find a weak point and exploit it. The Ming knew this, but they preferred to pretend otherwise. After all, they had spent decades building the wall and shed countless gallons of blood to defend it. To them, it represented Chinese culture and the prosperity that came with it. But was that really the case? Well, the wall did play a role in keeping China safe, but it wasn't the only factor. Most of the time, invaders were repelled not because of the wall, but because of the armies defending it. The wall didn't bring prosperity either. Most of the benefits of living near the frontier came from trading with the outside world. In fact, the wall discouraged trade by making it more expensive and harder to monitor. In reality, the wall was a mere symbol of Chinese pride. It showed everyone who looked upon it that China was a powerful, unified empire, and no one was getting in without the emperor's permission. Click here to watch one of these next videos, and remember to subscribe for more journeys through time and space.